Good evening and welcome to the 2023 League of Women Voters of Falmouth's Candidates Night. I'm Janet Lauer, Steering Committee Chair for the Falmouth League. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I would like to express our appreciation to the candidates for participating and the watching audience for coming tonight. Also, our gratitude and admiration to FCTV Public Channel 13, our partner in presenting Candidates Night. Thanks to FCTV, this event is being broadcast live tonight and will be rebroadcast on Channel 13 as well on FCTV's Roku and Apple TV channels and the FCTV website, www.fctv.org. You can check FCTV's broadcast schedule on the station's bulletin board and in the Falmouth Enterprise. 2023 marks the 30th anniversary of FCTV. Congratulations. Heartfelt kudos to the dedicated members of the League of Women Voters Service Committee who have contributed to this program and who have worked so hard to make this event a reality, and to the many leaguers who are volunteering to help out this evening. Deep gratitude to our library director, Linda Collins, and her staff for overseeing the seating arrangements in the Herman Bay Room. A few words about the League. We are a nonpartisan political organization of women and men. We're nonpartisan because we never support a candidate or party. We're political to the extent that we do take positions on public policy issues, but only after studying the facts, discussing them, and forming a group consensus. We work to encourage active participation in government, to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. Literature about the Falmouth League can be found in the lobby and on our website. Voting is one kind of active participation in government. We hope that the information provided by the candidates this evening will help you to cast an informed vote on May 16th. On this election day, there are a number of lively contests among candidates who represent Falmouth residents for town government. Due to the large number of candidates in 3 contested races, we will unfortunately not be able to include a segment featuring uncontested offices. The League would like to recognize the uncontested candidates. For Planning Board for a 3-year term, James Fox, Pamela Harding-Barrett, and John Drewley. For Municipal Light Board, Sam Patterson, Ed Schwartz, Scott Corner, Jim Newman, and Courtney Bird. And for School Committee, 1-year term, Heather Goldstone. The League thanks them for their valuable service to our town. The candidates from the contested races will be answering questions submitted by the League and by members of the public in writing. Our moderator is Mindy Todd. It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce our moderator, Mindy Todd, award-winning broadcast journalist and host of WCAI's The Point. Thank you, Mindy.
Thank you. Could we have the candidates for Board of Trustees of the Library come on up and sit behind your names? So great to see such a full room. It's been a while, huh? Great. So nice all of you could come out. So we are, as Janet said, going to have the contested races. Judith Fenwick could not be here this evening. She's ill. So the one question that was sent in advance, she has written, I'll read for her, and her closing statement. As mentioned, the questions are formed by the League. Each candidate has 1 minute to answer the questions. Where's our timekeeper? Timekeepers are over there. So you'll see you have 30 seconds, and then they'll hold up. The red thing means finish your sentence quickly, or I have to stop you. I hate to do that, but I will. And then you'll have 1.5 minutes for your closing statements at the end. All right, so let's get started here. And our candidates are, as we mentioned, Judith Fenwick, who's not here. Jane Sigenvis-Martin, welcome. Camille Romano, welcome to you as well. Thanks for being here. All right, for our first question, what do you consider the Falmouth Public Library's most important role in community life as the population becomes increasingly computer literate and technologically savvy? And we'll start with you, Camille.
I think that...
Bring that microphone a little bit closer to you.
Sure. I think as the population increases and the use
Can you hear her? No, let's...
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I think as the population of Falmouth increases and as the use of technology increases, that it's very important that the library is able to provide instructions to people in how to use that technology. I think the young people coming up in schools today obviously have, it's native to them. And some of us that just picked up the beginning of that wave feel more comfortable, but there's an awful lot of people in this town who are just beyond that. And I think that the more we can do to make people comfortable and use those resources to the best interest is great.
Thank you. Jane?
Repeat the question again?
Sure. What do you consider the Falmouth Public Library's most important role in community life as the population becomes increasingly computer literate and technologically savvy?
I think they've done a
Bring
wonderful...
your microphone really close to you.
That's unusual for me. Usually my voice just goes. They've done a really wonderful job, in my opinion, in keeping up with the times, and as technology has exploded, they've done a great job with clams and remote and how they have book clubs that are over Zoom now and virtual things. And I think all those things are very, very important because we all learned during the pandemic that we don't need to go to the brick and mortar building. We can participate in library experiences from our homes, and I think that it's important for them to keep up with that.
Right. And then the next question, we'll start with you this time, Jane.
Okay.
The Falmouth Public Libraries offer many services. Which do you think offer the greatest public benefit, and what additional services would be appropriate to offer?
This was the question that we were given beforehand, so we had time to prepare. So I have a better prepared answer for this one, and I've given it a lot of thought. I've watched the services expand and change as technology and the needs of patrons has evolved, and I've been impressed at how the library has seamlessly interfaced with new technology. For example, they just all went to a new system called Aspen, and it went very, very well because they were prepared. I watched the staff deal with the COVID lockdown and remember coming out in freezing weather to porch pickup, and was so happy when they got us back into the library. So what do I think is the most important? I don't want to use myself as saying what's the most important, but there is a strategic plan that the library has done starting July of 2022. And one of the factors that they came up with, factor number 3, was service quality, service excellence, which states the library is committed to providing the community with high-quality library services delivered by helpful, friendly, and well-trained staff. As we all know, working in Falmouth is challenging for everybody.
Thank you. Camille?
I also have written down, the greatest public benefit offered by the library lies in its core responsibilities, which are providing the community with free access to all of its collections and programs. Borrowing books, CDs, DVDs is the main reason people come to the library, and that goal is well met in Falmouth. There will always be a desire for more copies of titles, digital versions, different languages. Funds aren't available to meet every request, so the library must continue to prioritize what they can realistically do. I'd like to see expansion in a couple of areas. Again, funding makes a difference, but the library offers an impressive list of programs for adults and children, and in a perfect world, you'd be able to attend those programs virtually or view them later on demand. We also have in Falmouth an active community that offers various venues for music, arts, historical, cultural events. I think if there would be a way to find a way to be able to enhance the cross-promoting of those events among these various places, then everyone would see what was going on during the year.
Thank you. And Judith Fenwick did respond to that question, so I'm going to read her answer, and you guys will time me on this too, right? Okay, all right. As part of its mission, the library, with its locations of the main library, East and North Falmouth branches, meets the reading needs of a year-round resident population and visitors through having library doors open 101 hours a week between the 3 locations. By reading needs, I mean materials that can be checked out of the library beyond books, plus online resources like Canopy and Libby. The library's 3 3 meeting rooms serve as venues for library programs, workshops, classes, and meetings, plus are available for local groups to add programming to the event list. These are just a few of the many library services. I think the greatest public benefit is derived from hours that the library is physically open. Bill Moyers wrote in his 2014 book entitled The Public Library that public libraries are an amazing emerging new commons as a trusted gathering place in person and virtually. The 101 libraries hours I mentioned earlier are covered by the town's operating budget. I would work to increase East Falmouth's hours significantly from 30 hours a week to better serve the public need that this opportunity would provide. Thank you. All right. Next, I think, Camille, it's your turn to go first. Massachusetts state law entrusts library trustees with the custody and management of the library and reading room and all town property relating to the library. Further, state law gives the library trustees both the power and the duty to expend all money raised or appropriated by the town. What are your qualifications to carry out these important duties?
I have a extensive background in finance, and I find budgets fascinating, and I like to find ways to help work within that and to maximize the use of funds. I also, during parts of my career, have had some exposure to maintaining buildings in terms of the financial. I was a CFO. Looking at keeping track of those things, and again, I enjoy that and think it's critical because that's part of an organization. The big bricks and mortar and the resources and materials that are involved are as important as the people and the people that use it.
Thank you. Jane.
Well, I don't have a background in finance. I was a certified nurse midwife, a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, and delivered babies at home and in hospitals and in birthing centers. So I do have a great attention to detail, which is required in that career. Once I retired from that position, I was a member of the board of Woodrise Condominium, and I helped to oversee a $2 million extensive building envelope repair project, and was responsible for the day-to-day and interacting with the workers. And it was a fascinating experience, and I put the fiduciary responsibility of all of the homeowners of Woodrise equal to mine. I was also a homeowner there, so yes, I'm comfortable serving on a board and working with financial situations.
Just tell me something with you, Janet. I'm sorry, I think I called you Jane last time. Janet.
Okay, my mother-in-law called me Janet for years. It's fine.
So Janet, what should be the role of the Library Board of Trustees regarding issues of censorship?
That's a very interesting question. That was brought up at the last library board meeting. Both Camille and I sat in on that so that we could kind of get an idea of what we were getting in on. And actually, there's never been a book that has been banned from the Falmouth Library. I was very interested to learn that. Also, that they do have policies and procedures in place for if somebody does want to question a book or say that a book is not a good book. There's a whole situation that's already thought out for how to handle that, and it includes questions such as, have you read the book? If you've read the book, what parts of the book do you think are bad? What book could you recommend instead of that? So there is that in place for that, and I think that all books are valuable, and there should not be book censorship.
Thank you. Camille.
As Jane said, we were at that meeting, and it was quite an interesting discussion. One of the staff had attended a workshop in Florida, and and I agree. We're very fortunate here in Falmouth that we've not had this situation, but they have been proactive. They do have the policies in place and have had those discussions. I personally don't think it's shocking to think that could even be a possibility, and I'm glad to know that we're looking out for that, and I think that it's important that we are involved as part of the Board of Library Trustees and being aware of these situations as they arise.
Thank you. Camille, technology now enables library users to access the library's holdings and stores of information without setting foot in the library. How do you see libraries changing over the next 10 years?
I think that ability is such a plus for those people who, again, are technologically savvy and can utilize those resources. I think that I think what it'll do is it'll expand the use of the library, because there's still a need to physically go in the library, to sit there, to touch and feel those books, to talk to a librarian, to ask your questions. That's not going to go away. I think the demand is increasing from that respect, which is a joy to see. I just think we'll see more and more use of the library as time goes on.
Janet?
Jane, as one,
Don't confuse me.
as one of the super users of the CLAM system and using the remote access on my Kindle, on my tablet, on my phone, I certainly see a great benefit to that. I can be sitting anywhere in the United States and read a book from the Falmouth Library or the Harwich Library or the Nantucket Library, and it's a wonderful thing. So I think that with the way that that has expanded, and as generations are coming up, it's only going to become bigger. And there's going to be more of that, and movies and television. And now there is a library of things in the library, which I think is absolutely fabulous. Things that you can borrow, like metal detectors. But I think Camille is right. I agree 100% that the brick and mortar is always going to be important. Interacting with the staff is always going to be important. But I do think technology will just continue to explode.
We're going to move on to closing statements now, and you'll have a minute and a half this time. And Janet, we start with you.
I'm just going to change my driver's license to Janet. I think I'm starting to like it.
I'm sorry?
That's okay.
It's,
It's
I
all right.
have Jan. Is it Jane or Janet?
It's Jane, but it's all right.
Oh, it's Jane. I saw Janet down here. So sorry. It is
no,
Jane. Okay.
You answered to both.
My love affair with libraries and how they expand one's mind began as a young child living in a very rural area of the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania. One day during the beginning of summer school vacation, a miracle occurred. A bookmobile stopped on my street, and I was able to take out a few library books. I was about 6 years old, and I was already an avid reader. After my first experience with those wonderful books, the librarian realized she had a voracious reader on her hands. And from then on, every 2 weeks, I'd get a milk crate full of books, and none were ever returned unread. From that summer on, I've always had a library card, no matter where I lived, and it has always been very well used. Public libraries are the conduit to exploring the world, expanding one's mind, and facilitating lifelong learning. I've lived in Falmouth for 22 years. One of the first things I did when arriving was to get a library card from the Falmouth Library main branch. I'm a frequent and consistent user of the library online with clams and in person almost every day. Having this relationship is what has driven me to run for office, to become a trustee of the library, so that I can in some way give back to all those libraries that have shaped my life so far. If elected, I commit to attending the monthly meetings and to being an active board member. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters of Falmouth for giving us this time to talk with you, and you all for taking the time to attend. I would appreciate your support on May 16th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jane, it's a good thing I got ordered new glasses today, just this afternoon. All right, Camille.
The local library has been a destination wherever I have lived. In Falmouth, we are fortunate to have multiple locations serving the town, and with the CLAM systems, there is little that isn't available. The Board of Library Trustees advocates and oversees the library, and I would like to become involved. I thrive in being part of a mission-driven team working to provide the best for its members. When I first came to the town, I served as treasurer of the Friends of the Falmouth Public Library and worked with the director and staff on their wish list. The list is provided annually by the staff to the Friends, who pay for some or all of the items that fall outside the library's municipal budget. It was rewarding to help those needs. For 12 years, I was treasurer of the Falmouth Education Foundation. The foundation supports students and teachers of Falmouth with grants that go beyond what they can do with the school's basic funding. I see a common purpose in the responsibilities of the Board of Library Trustees. Our library system is one of the most important resources in Falmouth, and we are being asked to do more with what we have. I pride myself in being able to evaluate and prioritize situations, refining these skills during a professional career in nonprofit finance at Woodwell Climate and now at Highfield Hall. Although the first answer to a request might begin with, "No, we can't do that," I strive to finish with, "Here's how we can do it." I'm excited about the opportunity to be on this board and use my skills in working with the library director and staff to help meet the needs of the community at large. Thank you.
And I'm going to read Judith Fenwick's closing comments for you, as much as I can anyway. First, I ran for my original term literally in the footsteps of a venerable gentleman, Otis Porter. I moved to Falmouth in 1978 to work at SEA, and Corey Kramer sent me back to college in 1980. I moved back to Falmouth after graduation in 1983 to accept a job at Huey. My mother moved to Falmouth then since my father had passed away. I had grown up hearing about Falmouth from my mother because she had taught school here from the opening of the village school in 1932 to 1938. She and I rented an apartment on West Main Street, which put her in walking distance of her former teaching colleague and my friend Impy Porter, pen pals for 45 years. The library was a cornerstone of family outings after my daughter was born in 1986 and continued until Phoebe went to college in 2004 and my mother was at Royal Megansit. When I talked with Otis Porter in 2017 about the board and my interest in running, he gave me a good overview of his almost 4 decades on the board and about the history, challenges, and opportunities of the board, seeing Falmouth between Otis's history and my mother's lens of the early years and our family engagement as patrons propelled me to run and run again in 2020. The second reason I'm running for a third term is that my tenure thus far on the Board of Library Trustees has been busy and rewarding. As part of a team of 7 trustees, I can only think of accomplishments as a group, which have been many, from providing annual support to the library, staff for programming, and providing public computers and staff professional development, developing the current strategic plan, evaluating the director, additions and enhancements to the library buildings and grounds, continuing support from the Friends of the FPL Support Fund, and the latest and exciting proposal to renovate or rebuild East Falmouth. Thank you. Sorry I couldn't get the whole thing in, but that was a minute 30. Okay, so our candidates for Board of Library Trustees, that's 2 for a 3-year term, and that is Judith Fenwick, Jane Ziegenfuss-Martin, and Camille Romano. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, school committee candidates.
Oh, I'm sorry, Terry. I'll look.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, school committee next. We are electing 3 candidates for a 3-year term, and the candidates are Terry Medeiros, Allison Brodet, Christopher Lumping, Michael McCarthy, Terry Alice Hunter, and Susan Augusta. Up first, the first question, and I'm going to start here and we'll go right down the line to start with. So, Mike, what do you consider the school committee's most important responsibilities, and which one would be your priority? And bring your microphones very close.
Yeah, I saw that before. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. I think the most important thing is management and leadership. I mean, for the school committee, there's, of course, educational goals and policy. There's the management, and I think everything, the budget falls under that category too. All of this stuff, the most important thing to me is the management and the leadership, and I really view the school system as a community, and all the pieces need to communicate with each other and really work together. The teachers, the students, the parents, the school committee, the administration. It's just, I really view it as a team sport, and communication is going to be the way to go with that. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Christopher, same question.
I consider the school committees, can you hear me all right?
I don't, come closer. Is that mic on? Should be.
Can you hear me now?
Nope.
You want this
They
one?
should all be on.
How about now? Does that work?
You want this one?
Is that? Sorry. Hello? Oh,
There we go.
that
There we
works.
go.
Okay. Thank you. I consider the school committee's most important responsibilities to include establishing educational goals and policies for the school district, overseeing the budget for the school district, the evaluation of the school, of the superintendent, and community engagement. I'm eager and excited to participate in those responsibilities and hope to bring a different perspective and viewpoint to the discussion. As a new member, I plan to do a lot of listening and learning. However, one area that I would like to contribute immediately would be working with other school committee members and the administration on community engagement. I would like to reach out to students, families, teachers, and staff throughout the district to solicit feedback regarding current programs and policies and work with other school committee members and the administration to provide clear communication of existing programs and policies. I believe the true power of the school committee stems from its actions as a team and not from its individual members, and I hope to become a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Good evening. A school committee's responsibilities are within 3 areas: budget, policy, and hiring and evaluating the superintendent. I feel all 3 are of equal importance. As a former member of the committee, I understand the role of school committee members. As stated in the Massachusetts Association of School Committees' Roles and Responsibilities, a school committee must be responsive to its constituencies in governance, sensitive to the diverse needs of all learners, an advocate for students, and learning before the people of the community. With that being said, it is important that the school committee sets a budget that ensures that all students receive a free and appropriate education while still being fiscally responsible. A school committee must continue to monitor the budget once it is approved.
Thank you. Terry?
Good evening. The most important thing that I believe for the school committee is transparency. Right now, we're reading things in the paper before parents are being acknowledged with what's going on. We entrust teachers, children, for okay. Our teachers are stressed out, fearful, parents and teachers fearful of retaliation. And if we can't give that transparency to have the input that the school committee and the administration, superintendent, are working together, nothing's going to change. School committee is a board of directors, superintendent is the CEO. But you as the parents are the stockholders. So you pay the taxes, you should have the power of how your children are educated. Transparency is key. Thank you.
Allison?
Terry and I need to share this microphone.
Oh, I don't think, is that one not working as well? It was, I think that,
Still?
oh, there we go. There we
Is it
go.
on now?
Okay.
I think Terry and I need to share this final microphone.
Yeah.
Not simultaneously.
Right. We'll have a duo. I think the primary responsibilities of the school district or the school committee are to write and maintain policies that guide the district, obviously consistent with standards established by the Board of Education, to approve and monitor the budget for the school system, and to hire and evaluate the superintendent. All of these responsibilities are interconnected. You cannot break them apart. Though I believe that policy would probably be my priority, ensuring that we work to build trust through transparency, and staying committed to representing the needs and the interests and the achievement of all of the students in the district.
Thank you. Terry?
I think you'll hear this for the 5th time. It's because we are governed by the Massachusetts general laws and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And I'll read to you pretty much from their literature what a school committee member should do. School committee responsibilities are, I just said that, they are to monitor the budget, develop policy, and hire the superintendent and support her to carry out her plans. I think they are all equally important. You can't run a school district effectively if there is a shortfall in any one of these areas. The budget should be developed in consideration of the mission and vision of the school district. The policy is another thing you have to deal with, and it's amazing what's in it. You have to include updates eternally. The budget, the policy book is never complete. Because things happen every day that have to change, like what kind of service animals. That's all I got.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to start with you this time, Christopher. What issues and concerns have motivated you to run for school committee?
Was that a minute?
In terms of motivations for running, over the last few years, I felt it's been very important to become a more vocal voice in local government and local issues. And with being a student who grew up here and who went through the whole Falmouth Public School system and who now has students in there, I'm very committed to being a part of this community, and we're very much embedded in this community. And I feel from parents I've spoken to and some teachers that it's very important for the community to be aware of what's going on, and I feel like there is a lack of that understanding. So my hope is to bring that voice to parents and to bring the voice of parents and students and family and caregivers to the administration.
Thank you, Susan.
My husband and I both attended Falmouth Public Schools, as did our 3 children. And I am now the grandmother of 4, one of whom was a student at the Morse Pond School. My daughter, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter are educators, and our lively conversations have contributed to my drive to be knowledgeable about educational issues. I'm very committed to the town of Falmouth, and I feel as a former member of the school committee that I still have something to contribute.
Thank you. Terry?
Again, transparency. You cannot have trust without transparency. I am 6 generations in Falmouth. And when I grew up here, it was more of a community-based, and you helped each other out. You don't allow your kids to eat foods created with GMOs. Then why would you allow your child to be taught on a screen with artificial intelligence? If that is what the majority of the people want, then that's what we go with, how we vote. We don't want the fiasco with the virtual school that was applied for without our consent. In order for the budget, the policy, or anything to work, we have to work as a unit. We are not a mistress to a husband and wife as the school committee and the superintendent. We are an equal partner, and we should have an equal say.
Thank you. Allison?
Mindy, would you mind repeating that question?
Sure. What issues and concerns have motivated you to run for the school committee?
Really just making sure that everyone in our community is heard and represented. And I think everyone needs a voice. Everyone needs to have that representation. And I'm at a point right now where I feel like that community involvement and by contributing to the school committee, I can show my kids and other kids that community involvement truly does matter.
Thank you. Terry?
I am not, I didn't begin with any issues and concerns. I was a teacher, and when I retired, I said, well, what am I going to do now? Because I wanted to remain in the field of education, because it keeps you young. It really helps you look at the future and helps you guide what you're doing nowadays. There are some issues now, but I think they're more national kind of issues, like what role is technology in students' lives? And I hope as our system that we can use technology and teach kids to use it, but don't let technology use them. So I think that's what we are about. And to try to convince them not to use ChatGPT. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a mechanism to have an artificial intelligence do your homework for you. So we want to guide them away from that.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Yeah, some good answers here, and I think I agree with all of them. But the thing with me is that, we have young kids starting out in the system, and just looking at the state of the country and school, sort of schools to other places. I worry about the direction that sometimes things can go, and I try to bring a thoughtful approach to problems, and I think that's the main thing that drove me to run, was that I think I can contribute in a way that, helps tie people together, the whole system, including the teachers and the students and the parents, so.
Thank you. Susan, we're going to start with you this time. Several Falmouth schools need renovation or replacement. Do you think money should be allocated over the next 3 years to address these needs, and why?
Would you repeat that, please?
Sure. Several Falmouth schools need renovation or replacement. Do you think money should be allocated over the next 3 years to address these needs, and why?
I would need to be brought up to date on those issues. Our schools, a good portion of them have been renovated within the past 20 years. Lawrence School, Mullen Hall School, as well as the Morse Pond School, and smaller efforts made at East Falmouth and T-Ticket. As far as I have seen, they seem to be in good shape. The school system seems to be taking care of them.
Thank you, Terry.
As far as I'm concerned, money should be put aside to make sure that they are up to code and they don't have any health hazards. But I don't believe in putting money into a building if you're not putting money into the students that occupy that building. They are the ones that need that education in order to move forward. We got over $5 million with ESSER funds from the American Rescue Package. And we have to understand that our kids in school right now, when they're adults, are going to be paying that money back. So if we don't ensure that they're getting the benefits of that money now, then we have failed them. As long as the school buildings are safe and there are no health hazards, we should put the money where it belongs with our children, because they are our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison?
Keyword need, saying I'm not brought up to speed on the current situation as a new member. This would all be a giant learning curve for me. But if the buildings need repairs, I think money absolutely needs to be allocated for those repairs. These kids can't learn if they're learning in subpar environments. I absolutely believe that that need is the key word.
Thank you. Terry?
We recently had a director of finance named Patrick Murphy, and he was very, very talented in looking at the state of buildings and budgeting ahead a little bit. So we're a little bit ahead in oversight of what needs to be done. We lost him, unfortunately, to the town of Barnstable. But anyway, so we're okay in that area. One thing I want to say, though, is when you go to these buildings, older than they are, they sparkle. It's amazing how clean our buildings are. I mean, even the Lawrence School, from which I graduated, and that was a long time ago, it's still very clean. So I think we do a good job with our schools, and we've had some lead-in way to look at what repairs might be necessary.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, in great shape, but absolutely need money budget. Keep, yeah.
Chris? Sure. Question is, several Falmouth schools need renovation or replacement. Do you think money should be allocated over the next 3 years to address these needs, and why?
Kind of going along with what some of the other candidates have said, and the key word being need, I definitely agree that money should be allocated for that. But I think in addition, it would be helpful to reach out to actual, if this is based on administration or if it's based on teachers, student input, to figure out exactly what might need to be fixed, or if there's anything that they particularly would like to see changed in order to make the schools better for students and for teachers and staff.
Thank you. Hey, Terry, we start with you this time. The Falmouth libraries offer many services. Which do you think offer the greatest public benefit, and what additional services would be appropriate to offer?
Well, my son likes the library because it is a break from having the Chromebook. So I think that is a very important key element. I think what the libraries also should offer, what we have done in this country with non-technology. If the satellites go down tomorrow and your GPS isn't working, does your child know how to read a map? Do you know who to call on your phone without having to say Google call and not know it? Our children need to know history as it happened, not as told by. Unless you are a Native American, you are an immigrant, I am an immigrant. So we need to stop giving power to labels and more power to love. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison?
One more time, when you
Oh,
please
sure,
repeat
yeah,
that.
no problem. The Falmouth libraries offer many services. Which do you think offer the greatest public benefit, and what additional services would be appropriate to offer?
In terms of kids and our community, then I think that the libraries offer so many opportunities. There's the teen room, there's different programs that are offered after schools, and for those kids that, don't have a place to go after school, there are programs that they can go to. I think that programming can absolutely be expanded, and to Terry's point, there's a lot of learning that our kids could do that is extracurricular, things that, and interests. American Sign Language was one of those that was brought up to me recently. That would be a fantastic after-school program that the libraries could offer. So I think just expanding that programming for the kids in our community would be fantastic.
Thank you. Terry?
I think one thing that's great that the libraries provide is kind of an equity for any kid, any person who wants to read. If you live in Falmouth, you can go right in there and use the books. So that's just wonderful. And I also like the vision of the rooms where you can have kids sit in circles and people can read to them. Kids love that. They absolutely love it. I was a high school teacher, and I went in to read to some kids at North Falmouth Elementary, and they were better behaved, and they have a lot more energy than high school kids because they were just so interested. So you show them that you love it, you get them to love it, and that's what a library can extend.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I was always a library rat as a kid growing up, and in college too, spent a lot of time in libraries. I love them. My kids come to the library a lot as well and have stacks of books. And, I think one of the library trustee candidates mentioned hours and time, and I think that, open hours, availability, libraries are just such a beautifully safe place, I think, and so making sure that they're available as much as possible would be a priority.
Thank you. Chris?
No problem. I agree. I think we have a very strong public library system here in Falmouth with a lot of programs, a lot of arts and crafts and activities and events for kids. I think one of the important things is making sure the times and hours are kind of available for families to attend. And I think one service that may be helpful might be maybe having a public official, like either a school committee member or someone, to actually have a meeting time at a library for parents or any other members of the community to sit and talk with them, just to talk about any issues. I feel like public libraries are a great place for the public to kind of interact with people. And I think that would be a great opportunity for local government officials to kind of, have an informal kind of way of getting to know the public and vice versa.
Thank you. Susan?
That's a great idea, Chris. As a young girl, I can still remember going to the library, and it sounds really strange, but the smell of new encyclopedias, I still sense that when I walk into a library. It gives a kid an opportunity to just explore. And even from a young age, the programming we have in Falmouth, to be able to bring young children, toddlers, to start to experience books and the library is just so wonderful. I would look forward to the opportunities that the East Falmouth Library being open more hours would benefit more children from that end of town.
Thank you. We're going to move on to closing comments now. And again, you'll have a minute and a half. And Allison, we start with you.
I did not come prepared with closing statement. However, I'm not joining this race with an agenda. I'm not a politician. I'm a parent. I have 2 kids in the school district, and I've been in the classrooms. I've volunteered with lots of different programs in and after school. I think, as a member of the scientific community, I think I can bring an unbiased approach to a lot of this problem solving. I think the way that we solve these problems and the different ideas and ideals that our community have will just show strength in our community. And I think that I can bring that to the table. I think I would do an excellent job as a school committee member. I appreciate you all coming tonight and hearing us out. And if anybody wants to talk afterwards, I do much better person to person. But please, I would appreciate your vote on May 16th.
Thank you. Terry?
That's right. I missed that we had a 1 minute and a half wrap up. But I guess I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I graduated from Lawrence High School in 1968. I guess you have to be transparent these days, so I might as well give the date. Upon graduation, I went to college. I studied foreign languages, and then after that, I went and lived in Europe for a while, which helped me immensely as a foreign language teacher. And then when I retired from teaching, I looked around and I said, oh, I still miss the kids. So I ran for school committee, and that was 15 years ago. And I've been on the school committee for 15 years, so I have a lot of experience. But I'm not going to tell you that experience is why you should vote for me. It's because I'm very enthusiastic still. I'm retired, so I have time during the day. So I make a point to go into the schools, get invited in, sit in with the kids, because ultimately they're our clients, and you got to stay connected with them, and you got to remember, once you go into the schools, you know that things aren't like they were when you were there. So you got to adjust. I guess jump into what I'm looking forward ahead to would be to, again, I'll say this, teach kids that don't let technology control you. I mean, you control it and use it. And one other thing I was thinking was important. We need to get off the technology highway and sit down and talk.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I didn't come prepared with a closing statement either, and I'm not such a great off-the-cuff speaker, I think, but you know, I have, like I mentioned, I think I have 3 kids in the district in the schools, starting out, 1 in kindergarten and 2 in 3rd grade. And, you know, I work with a lot of engineering systems, and I tend to take a systems approach to things when I'm looking at problems. And so what I try to do is sort of take a higher view with issues and look at, kind of try to look at all the different stakeholders that are involved, the parents, the teachers, the students, you know, the community, and you know, I pride myself in being thoughtful and really, like Allison was saying, I mean, I don't have an agenda either. I'm clearly not a politician, but I care about this town. I'm a town meeting member, if that matters, and it matters to me, but if it matters to the school committee stuff. But, you know, I like this town. I love our kids, and I think teachers and schools need to be stronger because it's a tough racket, and so I hope I can help. Thanks.
Thank you. Christopher?
I think we all may have missed that memo about closing statements. You know, I'm very proud to be sitting up here with all these other candidates. I feel like everybody has so much to offer. And, you know, my focus is really on community in terms of communication and making sure there's clear, transparent communication between administration and teachers and staff and families and students. And since I've had my children, I've been very involved with the education system in terms of being aware of what they're doing on a daily basis. My kids are very active in sports, and I've been volunteer coaching on sports. A lot of, I don't know if other parents can say that there's being a parent, there's not a lot of social time for parents. So I find my social time when I'm out at my kids' sports games, kind of interacting with other parents and other families, and just talking and finding out what their concerns are, what they're happy about. And I would really like to reach out to the community and kind of expand on that to kind of improve the community in general and the school system. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Although I'm not an incumbent in this race, I previously served on the school committee from 1991 to 2017, and I served as chairman for 7 years. I've served on the negotiating, budget, and policy subcommittees, and I was also a longstanding member of the School Building Needs Committee. I was fortunate in that I was able to raise my family in Falmouth, and I have been involved in some very exciting activities during their youth. I was a co-founder of Falmouth Youth Football in '93 and served as secretary from '93 to '98. If elected again, I will work to be an advocate for all learners and their needs and strive for equity of access and opportunities for the students of Falmouth. I'm dedicated to the town of Falmouth, and I support the mission and the vision of the Falmouth Public Schools. I promise to continue my past efforts if elected to the Falmouth School Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Terry?
I have sat on different school committees and different councils in different school districts. And one of the reasons that made me run is because I could not believe the difference in transparency and directness. So I decided I'm not going to complain, I'm going to run and I'm going to do something about it. I'm running because I believe you can't have trust if you don't have transparency. I am a special education advocate, trained legal auditor for compliance and contracts. I sit on several committees for child welfare, but most importantly, I am a parent of a child in this district. And I am tired of hearing from parents that they're living in fear. I'm tired of hearing about bureaucracy. I'm tired of hearing about challenges. I don't want to hear challenges, I want to hear change. As someone that knows a lot about the law, I know what it takes to do it. And unlike my fellow candidates, I do have an agenda. The agenda is that I adopted my son from foster care. When my son was 3.5, they didn't realize I was in the room when they said, "Who's going to fight for a black foster child?" It was then that I began my journey on becoming a special education advocate and have won state complaints without an attorney. Because my son will never question why he was born. He will know because he was born that so many families and children were helped. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, candidates for school committee: Terry Medeiros, Allison Brodet, Terry Alves Hunter, Susan Augusta, Christopher Lumping, and Michael McCarthy. Thank you for being here with us.
Good, my color. The seat's warm to me.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, moving on to Select Board candidates. Welcome. Our Select Board candidates are Nancy Taylor, Robert Dugan, and Robert Muscali. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, great. Same thing, minute and then a minute and a half at the end for closing comments, and we'll start right here. The first question: what do you consider the most important responsibilities Select Board members must address, and why?
So the most important responsibility for the Select Board is policy, and it's spelled out very clearly in the charter. But to do strong policy, you have to know the goal, and you have to know the needs of the community. And in order to find the needs of the community, you have to listen to the community. Right now, with the policy, what's happening on the 5-year plans is that the priorities change. They change every other year. We need to focus more on a single priority and still add extra attention to the other subject matter at hand.
Nancy?
Thank you. The most important responsibilities of the Select Board, there are 3 pieces that I see. Firstly, and particularly important right now, is hiring and evaluating the incoming town manager. We do set policy, which I see also as important. The other piece that the Select Board needs to do is create the vision for Falmouth, and within that vision, you have to identify priorities and then oversee the execution of those priorities with the town manager. So we do not manage the day-to-day operations of this town. We are to stay at the 30,000-foot view, and we really need to set that vision and make sure that we're identifying the priorities for Falmouth.
Thank you. Robert?
Okay, thank you. The answer is, of course, found in Article 3 of the Charter. The Select Board is the chief executive of the town, responsible for setting goals and making policy and interacting with the town manager to communicate those policies and goals to him and to measure his performance in achieving them. In addition, a Select Board member must be a leader, both individually and as part of the team. The Select Board is made up of 5 individuals with differing personalities, philosophies, priorities, and yes, ambitions. And a responsible member of the board needs to devise ways to work with all of them cooperatively. The Select Board member needs to set the tone at public meetings and even in public with people, with the community, to be a leader, to hear what they have to say.
Thank you. And Nancy, we'll start with you this time.
Okay.
What background, experiences, and training have led you to be a candidate for the Select Board?
Thank you for the question. I grew up here in Falmouth. I went to the Falmouth Public Schools. I raised my 2 children here in Falmouth. I spent my entire career in Falmouth, starting as an adjustment counselor way back when, and retiring as the superintendent of schools. I am very, very invested in Falmouth. I am dedicated to Falmouth, and I'm dedicated to the students, families of Falmouth. And I also know what it's like to be sort of the CEO of the school district and to work with a governing board and how that works. And I also understand some of how the departments work, because the school department is the biggest department in town. And I've been on the board for 3 years, and you learn an awful lot by doing.
Thank you. Robert? Ms. Gallagher?
Again, the question.
The question is, what background, experiences, and training have led you to be a candidate for the Select Board?
Well, I think the most immediate background that I have that qualifies me as being being the representative on the Cape Cod Commission appointed by our Select Board. The issues that the Cape Cod Commission has been dealing with recently align very closely with the issues that the town faces. The need for housing for all types of individuals with varying incomes and assets. Climate change and its effect on our coastline. Affordable daycare and pre-K services, the proper handling and elimination of wastewater. All of those issues are something I'm dealing with on the Cape Cod Commission, and feel that I would be able to bring that experience to my time on the Select Board.
Thank you. Robert?
So I also grew up in town, a lifelong resident, so I get the sense of the community growing up. I went to college. When I graduated, I came back here to work in the family business. We've been serving the community for over 50 years. Neighbor got me involved in town meeting, which is a baptism by fire. Everyone knows what town meeting's like. I decided to get a little more involved in regulatory boards, so I was appointed to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I was a long-serving member and officer for there on the Zoning Board of Appeals. From the Zoning Board, I went on to the Finance Committee. So from the Zoning Board, I learned permitting, town departments, how the public interacts with the town, Finance Committee, budgeting, long-term goals, and again, from the personal life, what the community is really looking for. And it's a lot different being on this side of the table versus on that side of the table, and there is a difference when the public interacts with the town hall, and I think there needs to be that understanding has to be taken care of, so the public feels more comfortable to deal with the town departments.
Thank you. Robert Muscali, we start with you this time. What actions should the Select Board take to ensure that our drinking water is safe?
Well, obviously, we need to look at all of the issues with respect to the septics and wastewater and what it's doing to our water quality, and take some steps to remediate those problems with respect to what's contaminating our freshwater ponds.
Thank you. Robert?
So the Select Board has to do absolutely every action necessary to protect our drinking water. We're a sole source aquifer. If we don't have clean drinking water, we're lost. That has to do sometimes with septic. It has to do with cleanups, PFAS, the base. We have a great water quality committee that does research. But anything that we hear from our town departments and engineering that we need to protect our drinking water, we do whatever it takes.
Nancy?
And I agree with both of my fellow candidates. I also would add that you need to have data, and you need to be testing and looking at water all of the time. It is so fundamental to everything. We're a coastal community. We do have issues that come up with water. I agree that we have a great water quality management team, but we need to take the information from that committee and do something with it, or direct them. So I think that's absolutely fundamental in this town.
Thank you. Robert Dugan, we start with you this time. What do you consider the most effective way to keep our citizens informed about decisions the Select Board makes?
I think there has to be more outreach to the public. You know, the town website is pretty antiquated. It's hard to, even with the renovation of it, it's very hard to get information. When important decisions are made, the public really doesn't understand what was considered to make those decisions. David Vieira years ago had the Citizens Academy, which is a great idea, where people could take part in and let you know how government worked, how permitting worked, how the town departments work. That's no longer active. The town should expand upon that. You could use FCTV. You could do a series of seminars with actually department heads, chairmen of committees, to give people much more of an education of what it takes to reach their goals in the town, and that they'll have a better understanding of how the meetings work.
Thank you. Nancy?
Public forums and education, and not only through the town's website. Forums, meetings, availability of Select Board members to speak with the public, to explain why one particular member, you know, my vote seems to be different from someone else's, and why I voted the way I did, and to have people understand why we do what we do.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, thank you. You know, certainly I agree with both of my colleagues up here. For instance, the need to go out into the community. I've participated in a number of forums that were coordinated by Barbara Schneider and Kim Fish to the community, dealing with housing issues in particular. You know, and certainly we need to continue to do that, and I think the Select Board has done a very good job up to this point in being out there in the community. I think the website is wonderful that the town has, because if you look on the every town Select Board meeting, if you go a little deeper on the website, you get to see the packets that the Select Board members have for the meeting, and those packets have an inordinate amount of information that is there and available if you're willing to find it.
Thank you. Nancy, we start with you. What are the most promising options the Select Board should consider in order to meet Falmouth's future energy needs?
Options. There are a couple of important options. I think we need to continue to pursue solar. I think we need to look at solar on more public buildings, including the school system, the school buildings. I also think that wind power is a clean, renewable energy, and I'm hoping that at some point, the town and a vendor, whoever that vendor may be, can come to a place of yes to make this town a place that provides and supports wind energy.
Thank you. Robert?
Yes, I certainly agree with Ms. Taylor. Wind is, certainly an important part of energy generation, and we need to do our part as a coastal community to work with an appropriate vendor who is responsive to the town and does what any responsible vendor should do when they come to a town, to answer questions forthrightly and not disingenuously. So certainly wind and solar. I know we're taking steps to put solar panels, or at least prime the roofs of our schools to be able to accept solar panels. So wind and solar certainly are, I think, are future options.
Thank you. Robert?
So we do have to look at renewable energies. The most probably promising right now is the solar, because we can actually put that in place. Now with the school systems, even though they do have to look at that for roofs, many of the school systems are designed that solar will not work on the roofs. But you could do a canopy system. The high school would be a great example. You have that very large parking lot that the students and the people use. You could put a great canopy system over that parking lot. It wouldn't make an issue as far as aesthetics because the area that it's in, and it would work really well. The town is also already changing over some of its vehicle fleets to electric. They've always looked at that. And I'm sure we always will look at wind. Whatever the project is, if it's presented to the town, you just have to make sure that the details that you review make sure that it's not more of a detriment than it is an asset to the town.
Ms. Scully, we start with you this time. What should the Select Board do to address the critical need for affordable workforce housing?
We all know that we have a terrible problem with housing, but not just affordable housing, attainable housing. Actually, I think all anyone would need to do is to try to find your January 24th, the point, and the issues facing Cape Cod and the islands, and the great presentation you had. Some of the things that we need to consider are possibly purchasing deed restrictions so that the properties can remain year-round rather than seasonal. We did a great job with our ADU bylaw, but it does cause some confusion, and there are some issues with respect to occupancy and dimension, and maybe we need to look at that. The Cape Cod Commission, where I serve, has actually proffered a model bylaw for ADUs. I think we should be looking at the possibility of a real estate transfer tax that's working its way through state government.
Thank you. Robert Dugan.
Yeah, so I was on the apartment, accessory apartment bylaw committee that allowed us to get these apartments so that seniors could age in place and add them, to their own properties. The main issue we had with that is that they did not include the deed restriction. The deed restrictions were always included previously, and the moment that was passed as a by right, people released all the deed restrictions on their properties. So you have to look at this just affordable, and one is to create affordable units that the town could also use towards the state guidelines. We could take the ADU, we could expand it, we could do by a special permit where the town could use some of the funds from the affordable housing to give a percentage to unit owners, but in those cases they would have to add a deed restriction, so it would allow people that couldn't afford these units to put on, but the town also gets something back because they have the units put on their rolls. The other thing is the town has to be much more proactive in their own projects. You cannot wait for developers to come to the town. When the developer comes to the town, they're not looking at it the town's best interest, they're looking at it from the side of the developer.
Thank you. Nancy?
Okay, in terms of affordable housing, I'd like to make a comment on what we have done, what this board has done. We've committed an unprecedented $4 million to the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund. We created an overlay district with 270 acres of space from the admin building to the green to combine business with housing units, or the Mr. Cod, which we developed. We have committed money to the senior housing project on the corner of Scranton Ave and Main Street. Just recently, the board did a workshop to explore the management of the 3,000 to 4,000 rentals that we have here in Falmouth. So I believe that we are looking at it. I also attended, Mr. Galasso held a kind of a meeting at the nursing home on Main Street that he is looking into potentially creating workforce housing. So I think there are pockets of it. I do see the need for Falmouth to be more involved and to be more sort of hands-on in the development
Thank
of
you.
affordable housing.
Now we're going to move to some audience questions, and Robert Dugan, we start with you. Short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO are pulling housing units from our year-round housing inventory. How would you address this?
So I think there's a little bit of a misconception on the summer rentals. Real estate's my business. I did summer rentals heavily in the 80s and 90s here. We actually have less summer rentals here now than we did in the 80s and 90s. There's a lot of cases that you get into with year-round tenancy with landlords because of the way the state laws go that are very risky for landlords. So we've lost some of the units because of that. We've lost other units because through the COVID pandemic, a lot of families moved back here. They started working out from the homes and using those. I think we need to focus more on how to create more units. I think if you start going into trying to restrict rentals here in general, the town is going to be mired up in a lot of legal processes with the state, and I think we need to look at another end. Airbnbs is different. An Airbnb, if a company is buying a property for an Airbnb, that could be restricted through zoning, but it has to be very specific on how you restrict it.
Thank you. Nancy?
I think we need to know how many businesses have bought properties in Falmouth and are using them as Airbnbs before we can come up with a plan to address that. I hear lots of numbers, but I don't know what the actual number is of businesses coming in. And I agree that if that is a high number, we do need to look at restricting it. And I do think we need to create more units, attainable, affordable units for people here in Falmouth.
Thank you. Robert?
Well, I think we can learn a lot by looking at what other similar towns such as Falmouth have done nationwide with respect to the need for year-round rentals. Again, at the Cape Cod Commission, we held the Cape One Summit in September and had some people from Vail, Colorado, who are dealing with the same problem. And their solution, or one of their solutions, was deed restrictions, as we mentioned, as we mentioned before. A vibrant town has 30 to 33% rental units, and Falmouth has about 19% rental units. So we really need to come up with some good innovative ways to deal with getting those rentals available for our workers, for police, for fire. We all know the problem that people are just moving out and living off Cape, but we need them as employees. Thank you.
Another audience question, Nancy. What conditions would need to be met to support continued studies for a cable landing in Falmouth?
That's a really good question right now. In terms of, I think, I have a couple of ideas. Firstly, we need a vendor that can come to us and really talk to us about a project. One of the pieces that I really opposed was that South Coast did not come and work with us in terms of talking to us about laying cable. I don't know the specific tests that would need to be done. That is not my area of expertise, but I think the town needs to do two things. One is this town has a wealth of knowledge around these types of issues, and we can get information from Woods Hole. I also think that we need to have somebody who oversees this project that is an attorney that specializes in wind and landfalls.
Robert, Ms. Scully?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think we need to get the message out that Falmouth is willing to do its part and foster renewable energy. And I think the town needs to work with a vendor and, you know, get some answers to questions. We all know the history of the last project, but we also know that when pushed, Yeah, 30 seconds, right? So you just gave me the red sign here. Thank you. But now I've lost my train of thought. So, but I think we just need to be, no, I'm sorry. My point was that when they were pushed, the prior vendor did come up with answers, and I think that's what we need to do at the very beginning of any process and get those questions out and get those answered out and then move the project forward.
Thank you. Robert Dugan?
So I think you have to start with these vendors of what information do they need before they can consider landing cables in the town. So I've spoken to the lead engineer on the South Coast Wind. I've spoken to the community outreach person. Right now, they don't have answers from the state that may relate to if this project is even feasible to be done. They need a study from the iOS board that won't be even come in till August. They haven't heard from the Ocean Board yet. According to the Fall River Herald, they're already saying right now, the South Coast Wind, that they think that the infrastructure upgrades in this area alone may make it not feasible. And they did say when they had the meeting at the Energy Committee that all of the infrastructure down here would have to be upgraded. All of it, to get the lines out. They would not explain how those costs would be taken care of. Those are questions you can get answered up front from the companies in the state without even having to discuss the cables. If they can do all that, if they can bypass all of those hurdles, then you consider the project and see what they have to offer.
Okay. Robert Scally, we start with you. How important is creativity as an asset or criterion in judging a candidate for town manager or select board?
I think that creativity is necessary for both the select board candidate and for the town manager. We need to come up with some new ideas, or at least relook at some of the ideas that have passed. I know, everyone probably has a junk drawer where they put stuff in, and they know it's important, and they know that at some point in time they're going to have to take a look at it. We all do. We have two actually. But the point is that every once in a while you've got to open that junk drawer and you've got to look at things and dust them off. And I think the town has, not out of malfeasance or misfeasance, put some stuff in the junk drawer. And I think we need someone creative to take them out of the junk drawer and bring them to the light of day.
Thank you. Robert Dugan?
I think you always have to look outside the box. You'll never have easy solutions to all the subject matter, and you have to consider all the new ideas that come in. Unfortunately, I find too often people don't listen to any of those ideas. They're more comfortable with what they know and what they don't know. They just kind of push to a side. Housing is one of the big issues. We know what concrete steps we can take towards housing. We also know that is not going to get us to the goals that we want. We have to have these other ideas that come in and consider how can we make those work.
Thank you.
Creativity. I think it's incredibly important for both the board as individuals and operating as a board and for the town manager to be creative. And I agree that getting to yes needs to be our goal. And how you get to yes is by listening to creative people with creative ideas. And so I think that's a really important piece, especially when you're thinking about the vision for Falmouth and moving Falmouth forward.
All right, Robert Dugan, we start with you. This time, another audience question. Under the town charter, the select board has the plenary power of investigation. How would you advocate using this power going forward? I wish it said investigating what, but.
We need to start investigating the process with the town departments. We need to find out if there's anything that isn't working right now, and if not, where do those changes need to come in? I hear very often from the public, because I always had to deal in the public end with the town hall, the public is treated different at departments. It's just the way it is. If you work at town hall or you've been on boards and committees, it's very easy to get information from a public department. It's different when somebody else comes in. I think they need to investigate, how the town itself interacts with the public and how you can ease that process to make it easier for everybody.
Thank you. Nancy?
I think I read the power of investigation a little bit differently. I think the board does have the power to investigate allegations of malfeasance, allegations of issues in the town, within the town departments. I don't know that that has ever been enforced or enacted upon by the select board. I'm trying to think of an issue. And I think the board does need to use it if and when it's appropriate.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, I think there's a specific provision, as I'm sure both of my colleagues know, in the charter that deals with the investigatory powers of the select board. They can subpoena witnesses, they can take testimony, they can direct the town manager to perform an appropriate investigation. Just as a for instance, there has been some recent discussion about the utilization of the Steamship Authority embarkation fee and where that money is going and how it's used. And I think that would be an area that might need to be investigated to see that those funds that are in that embarkation fee or embarkation fund are being used solely to mitigate the impacts of the ferries, which is, what the law requires that the money be used for.
One more audience question. It's going to be a tough one. Nancy, we're starting with you. Which one of these three issues will be your priority as a select person? Climate change, water pollution, affordable housing? I don't know how you choose.
Can you start with someone else, please? No, just kidding. I can't say that I could put one above the other one. I think they're all critical at this point, and I think it's incumbent upon the board to work on all three of those issues with equal tenacity.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, all three of those issues and then some more are paramount in what needs to be addressed. But I think everybody's got affordable housing on their mind. I'm going to say that coastal resiliency would be paramount in my mind as well. I think we have a wonderful report that was commissioned and prepared by the Action Committee. They recommended certain steps that up to this point haven't been taken. I would like to see that those steps are taken. They recommended that neighborhoods or coastal neighborhoods be assessed for the possibilities of future damage. They put one in the report for the Surf Drive neighborhood. I think that the town needs to see that all of the coastal neighborhoods are assessed for potential damage. So I would have to say climate resiliency, but certainly affordable housing is top of mind for everyone, as is clean water.
Thank you. Robert Dugan?
So I would say affordable housing. We've been dealing with trying to get housing for the last 10 years. We have not made enough gains at all. The state has said it's a crisis. The town has said it's a crisis. Now you have to make sure that when you do those gains and get those units, they will affect wastewater. You have to make sure if we're building properties, you build them in an energy efficient manner to help climate change. They're all interrelated, but if we don't start focusing on affordable housing, right now we have no workforce in town. The families that lived here, their children can't move here. They can't raise new families here. And if you don't have anyone to live in the town, you're going to have a problem. So that's what I would focus on.
Thank you. We're going to move on to closing comments now, and you have a minute and a half this time. And we start, Robert Miscali, with you.
Okay, well, thank you. I do have a prepared statement, but for some crazy reason, I put it on my phone, and I'm trying to figure out how to read it here. But I'll do my best. I believe that my record of public service to the town as a member of the Commission on Disabilities, as chair and member of the Cable TV Advisory Board, as an elected member of the Falmouth Housing Authority, and as Falmouth's representative on the Cape Cod Commission, in addition to being a member of a number of nonprofit boards here in Falmouth, make me a qualified candidate for the Select Board. A recent letter to the editor of the Enterprise asked the question, now what? I think we need to overcome the recent rhetoric and divisions and get the town back to where it has always been, a welcoming and engaging community. This is not a time to be complacent. The times ahead are challenging, but I think we are well positioned. We have dedicated and committed volunteers and a competent and dedicated workforce, and we need to thank them every time we have an opportunity to do that. I think that my experience, both as a professional, as an attorney, 47 years in the government, nonprofit, and private sector, give me the ability to answer that now what question in a pragmatic,
Thank you.
reasoned way. Thank you.
Robert Dugan.
So, as you all know now, so I grew up in this town. I've been on many boards and committees. I learned through town meeting, the zoning board, the finance committee. That gives me a professional background and an understanding that a lot of candidates just wouldn't have. It's a lot different when you're on committees and boards and you deal with the town hall as the department heads, and you also deal with the public. I also have a very deep respect for the volunteers in this town. You know, Falmouth couldn't run unless you use this volunteer base that we have, but many times they're overlooked. You know, they put these works on these boards and committees, and they come up with these ideas, and they try to help the town, and then they submit things, and the town says, you know, thank you, but, you know, thank you for service, but, you know, we're not interested in this right now. We're going to look at something else. I want to get that coming together back again. I want to get that sense of community back again, that when I was growing up in the community, everybody helped each other if you needed something. And that's what we need to get back. Also, with the new town manager coming in, I think I would be ideal to help a new town manager just with my knowledge of the area and my knowledge of, you know, how the town runs itself. So, you know, on May 16th, when you go to the voting booths, please consider me for a seat on the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. Nancy?
And I as well have grown up in Falmouth, spent my entire career here in Falmouth working with kids and with families. I am completely committed to Falmouth, and Falmouth is in a state of flux right now. We have a new town manager coming in, we have a new police chief coming in right now, and I would like to continue my service to keep some level of continuity on the select board. I would also add that when I look at the issues that Falmouth faces, and I think we do take the work of committees very seriously, and in doing that, you also have to think about how do you balance the priorities. You have to balance them because you get the recommendations, and then it's part of the board's charge to figure out what the priorities are and then how to pay for them. So I think that, you know, when you think about housing, you can't not think about water. Housing impacts our water, and you can't think about housing without thinking about public safety and what happens with public safety and the demands on public safety. And also thinking about our schools and supporting our school district. We have an amazing school district, and continuing to support that as a member on the board is really important to me. So I as well hope that on May 16th, you will consider a vote to keep Nancy Taylor on the select board. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Dugan, Nancy Taylor, Robert Miscali, thank you, all three of you being here. And thank you for filling the room. Great to see you all here. Thank you.